video out. There we go. Oh, is that working? Am I muted? Can you hear me? Ah, you should be able to see me now. I can't see you. Hello. It's all about me. Oh no. I've been caught eating again. No, it's not okay. Hold on, let me just get a booster cushion from Colt. I'm too short. Better, I'm a bit taller now. Where's my phone? Yeah, there. Have you got them now? So there was one from Topsy about open water confidence and how to get over the nerves of going into open water. There's the one from Kate. Was there one from Pat as well? I can't remember what the one from Pat was. And there was one from, was it John Southall, about getting comfortable and confident in the aero position on the bike. Okay. Yes. Yeah, because she mentioned to me about what's TSS all about. Yeah. Is my camera too bright? Difficult for me to see. Can you see me? That's probably my dodgy internet though. Are we live? How am I on? How can I be on?
Good afternoon. Welcome to the Do3 Q A session. I'm just going to switch Corin on. Where are we? Let's see. I might have to set this up a second. So where are you, Corin? Oh, you're on full screen there, Corin.
Oh no, don't put full screen.
Full screen, do we?
Half screen is plenty big enough for me.
See if we can get half and half on here. What's going on? going on? I can either get you or me, Corinne. They'll have to choose.
Well, there always has to be some kind of...
Yeah. Okay. Oh, there we go. There we go. We're both on now. They can have both of us. Anyway, so it turns out that we were chatting away, and you guys could hear us when we were on the holding screen. That's embarrassing. I think what we said, Corinne. I think we were okay. I think we were safe. We were. You could hear how professional we were planning it all. Hopefully, well, maybe not. Anyway, so I'm Do3. I'm Do3. It's a good start, isn't it? I'm Dave Knight. I'm the head coach of Do3. So this is our weekly Q&A session where we get quite a few questions sent in. But if anyone's watching and has any questions they want answering live, as it were, then just feel free to type them in the comments, and it should pop up on our screen here, and we'll do our best to answer your questions as we go along. But we've got quite a few to start with. We've got Corinne here. I think most of you have probably seen Corinne around the place and online things. So do you want to say hello, Corinne?
Hello, I'm sorry I'm a bit blurry today. I'm not really quite sure why. But my camera's looking a bit dodgy. Too much time in the sun.
You do look a little bit blurry. I think most people actually look better in. Don't they call it soft lighting or something? That people look better in with anyway.
Yeah, I think I'm happy being blurry. Sharp focus is good at the moment.
I've got a red nose again, like last week. So Stephanie will be popping up saying I've got a red nose and criticising me again for having a red nose. Anyway, shall we get on with the first question? Let's see if we can find the first question. Oh, I see what I've done here. I've got a problem here. I'm going to have to drop back from me to you. Hang on a second, because the questions are on a different screen. Okay, here we go. So the first question's Pat. First question, Pat. I know you're watching because you've already sent a comment in. Question for this afternoon. What do TSS scores in Training Peaks mean? I don't take a lot of notice of them, but should I be? Okay, that's a good one. Thanks for that, Pat. Let's get you back on. Let's get us both back on so we can both answer this and have a look at this. All right. So TSS within Training Peaks. Yeah, it's there. It's a number to be used, but you obviously need to know how to use it and how to interpret it. All right. So I think the easiest thing for me to do here is if I show you my screen. I show you my screen. I've got Training Peaks up, and might be a bit of a lag on there, a bit of a delay on the system. Just bear me 2 seconds while this kind of catches up a little bit. Here we go. So hopefully you can see my screen there. Can you see this, Corinne, on your end?
I can just see your desktop at the moment. I can't see.
Oh, it might.
Hold on. It's a bit of a. It might come up in a second. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, delay. All right. So, TSS scores then, they're a way of the way of Training Peaks monitoring the overall load that your body is going through effectively. So it stands for Training Stress Score. And like I say, it's a way of Training Peaks trying to evaluate your overall training load. All right. And if Training Peaks can evaluate your training load, it allows the system to present some data to you, which you can interpret if you know what you're looking at. So I'm just kind of going into my dashboard on Training Peaks here. Now I've got a premium account, so I'm not 100% sure you'll be able to see all of this if you haven't got a premium account. But what I'm just going to show you just simply, without, we could spend all day talking about Training Peaks to be honest, but just to keep it simple for now, the performance management chart, which is what you can see on the left-hand side here, kind of graphically presents you with a load of data, literally a load of graphs are sitting there. There's 3 graphs on there. So the blue one is your training load. All right. So what Training Peaks does is it uses your training stress score to work out roughly the best way to think about it is roughly what your kind of current fitness levels are like at the moment. The training stress scores are calculated based on your parameters that you've programmed into Training Peaks. I've got a message from Pat saying she's lost us. Can you still see, Corinne? Maybe it's just Pat's end.
Yeah,
Okay, all right. Hopefully it's just Pat's end. Hopefully you'll come back in a minute, Pat. So it's a way of calculating out the effort, and it's kind of lost my train of thought now. What you do is you train in you program in your threshold and one or two other parameters into Training Peaks, and then Training Peaks, as a result of that, knows how hard you're working in each session. So from day to day, it applies a score to each of your training sessions, and that kind of cumulative score allows the system to work out whether your training kind of load overall is trending upwards or trending downwards or staying level or whatever. All right. So, and that in simple terms is what that blue line is. So my blue line is just kind of slowly creeping up and has been since the start of lockdown because I'm doing a lot of cycling at the moment, and it's just tracking up nice and neatly, tracking up there. So the best way to think of it, Pat, is just a way of gauging how hard your sessions have been. Now, hopefully she's come back, I'm not sure. So the easiest way to think about training stress scores, if you were to go absolutely, let's put us back on camera here. If you were to go absolutely flat out for an hour, so 100% effort for an hour, you would get 100 TSS points. That would be equal to 100 TSS points. Okay. So if you were to go half effort for an hour, that would be 50 CSS points. And similarly, if you were to do 2 hours at half effort, that would be that would be 100 CSS points as well. All right. So the overall TSS score is calculated using a combination of the effort or the intensity of the session combined with the duration. So clearly, if you do a 10-hour bike ride, you can earn a hell of a lot of TSS points, but you wouldn't be able to ride them all at 100, a maximum effort. You'd have to kind of bring the intensity down. So that's the easiest way to think of it. So if you do a training session and you get 75 TSS points, then it's been kind of three-quarter effort. It's kind of, I'm simplifying it, but that's quite a good way of looking at it. If you did an hour's workout and you got 90, I kind of almost think of it as percentages. It's like a 90% effort out of that particular hour. So that, without going into too much detail, and again, we can spend hours on this, kind of in simple terms, should kind of hopefully paint a picture of what TSS scores are all about. It takes a little bit of time to get your head around it, but once you do understand it, it's really quite useful. As with anything data related, you have to take it all with a pinch of salt, because Training Peaks just knows what data you put into it and puts it through algorithms and spits graphs out. It's just a piece of wizardry that does that for you. What it doesn't know is literally physically how hard you're working, because it doesn't know how hard you've been working physically at home, what stresses you've got going on in your life, whether you've been digging the garden, all this kind of stuff. It doesn't really know how tired you are. It just kind of has an estimation based on your training. Now, I say that because people get really hung up on what the blue line is doing in Training Peaks, and whether it's going up or it's going down. They think if it's going down, they're kind of falling off the edge of a cliff, and they're getting less and less fit. It's just an indicator. I mean, that's all I use it for. It's all the coaches at Do3 use it for. It's just a kind of an indicator. It's another part of our toolbox, if you like, which allows us to see how training is progressing. So that graph I showed you, I'll just bring it up again. That graph I showed you previously, the steepness of this line here, see how it's nice and steady? So that's a nice, steady kind of progressive increase in the load of the training and the kind of the overall training stress that I've been undertaking. Oh, my telephone, thanks for that. Let's hopefully stop in a second. But slowly, steadily increasing. If this was all kind of jagged and it was skyrocketing up here and then dropping back off the cliff, that would not be a good way of training. And that's kind of, you might kind of pick up signs of overtraining and that kind of thing there. So I think probably it's worth us doing a completely separate session on Training Peaks, because again, we could spend absolutely hours on it. Can you hear my phone going off in the background there?
Yeah.
Someone's leaving a message on my. I'll have to talk over the top of it in case it's something important. So, if there's anything else that you can think about, Corinne, I mean, again, we could go on all day with this kind of stuff, but
I just like to see that blue line just gradually
yeah.
tracking it. If it's not doing that, and I know that there's a reason for it. Like at the moment, I'm not training much because I'm not going to be racing. I've got injury, so I'm quite happy for it to go down at the moment. But if I'm heading towards a race, I just want to see it going up. Otherwise, how it happens, I don't really care.
Yeah, and also just kind of to follow on from that, the blue line, the kind of the fitness line, if you like, it can't continue tracking up. So people get all upset when the line kind of gets to a certain point and then starts to level out. Because a large part of that equation is training volume, you're naturally going to start hitting a point where the volume can't be increased because you just got commitments in life, you're working and all that kind of stuff. So it will start to plateau out depending on how much training you're doing. All right. So I normally see scores of people that are training regularly. I will see scores of between, say, 90 and 120 or thereabouts. If you're getting over 120 kind of scores, there's normally either something wrong, as parameters are not set up correctly, or you're doing a shed load of, you are doing a lot of training. You'd have to be doing excessive amounts of training. And down the other end, if it's bumping along and you're doing kind of, I don't know, 50 and below, then but you're training your socks off, you're doing loads of hours, then clearly there's something not quite set up right there. So just have a look at that. So hopefully that's answered your question, Pat. But like I say, we will spend a bit more time on this because I think we touched on this the other week, actually, didn't we? There's TSS, there's intensity factors, there's variability indexes, there's all sorts of stuff in there, which is kind of good to know. I wouldn't get too hung up on it, but it's good to know stuff, and it's helpful, and it's just part of that component that helps you decide on how your training is going and how to monitor your training. So hopefully that will answer that question for you, Pat. Right, should we go on to the next one? Right, let's have a look. Just pop me back on a second. Right, so the next question then. Kate Miller. This is from, I'm not sure where this is coming from. Two-part question. Do you know anything about or ever experienced the condition of cyclist's hot foot? Basically, a burning pain in the ball of the foot. I've read it can do with shoes. I've had mine a fair while, so looking for some new ones. Anyway, are triathlon-specific shoes worth it? So, hot foot. Okay, so I think what we've got physio John Davis from Shire's Physiotherapy coming in for a Q&A tomorrow. So I think the best thing with that, Kate, I was aware of that question, is if we speak to John and get an answer from him rather than Corinne and I kind of, I mean, we can use, in fact, we'll give you our kind of common sense kind of reply on that in a second, but rather than just kind of waffle away and trying to find our way through it, we'll speak to John about that and just see what his take is. So, Kate, if you can kind of watch tomorrow or watch the recording, that could be one of the questions that we can ask John. We'll have to try and remember to ask him that, Corinne. So, yeah. Just more generally, I know when you're, and I kind of more equate it with running actually, when you have kind of hot spots in your shoes, it normally means there's an excess amount of kind of friction or some kind of pressure there. So, and I would imagine that it's the same kind of thing. I've never had it cycling myself, and it's not something I've heard about a huge amount on the cycling side of things. I would assume it would be a similar kind of thing. So some kind of pressure points within the foot there, which are causing it to get inflamed. There are other things which can cause hot spots, such as Morton's neuroma and things like that, which can flare up in the feet. So, Corinne, do you want to say anything else about that? But we'll kind of predominantly leave it for John, I think.
In terms of the actual what causes the foot burning, like you say, I can't really add anything to what you've already said in terms of pressure points or friction. But in terms of how you resolve it, if it is the shoes that are causing it and you're looking to get some new ones, you might consider some of the ones that have got moldable soles. or the whole shoe can be moldable. And you actually, I think Bont do them.
Yeah.
Where you buy the shoe and then you actually put it in the oven, warm it up, and then put it on and mold the shoe to your foot. So if you have got any lumps and bumps on your feet, you've got there is no one size fits all shoe. So if you have had problems, it might be worth considering some of those. And if you want to ask me about which particular shoes, I do know of some which you can get, and they're not ridiculously expensive. There's a tri version of them, and that might be worth something considering if it's something that's causing you problems.
Yeah. And the second part of your question there was about whether tri-specific shoes are worth it. We assume that you're talking about bike shoes there, Kate. I mean, in terms of purely for efficiency for triathlon, then certainly bike shoes, triathlon shoes, are worth it because of the transition side of things and the speed of getting your feet in and out. They're usually kind of designed in such a way they're a little bit more forgiving on your feet as well, so a lot more kind of smoothed out inside edges, so they don't have so many kind of seams and that kind of thing inside of them. Sometimes they've got drainage holes as well, so if your feet are still kind of wringing wet from swimming and things, they can allow some moisture out, allow some of the water out. So there certainly are good reasons. I mean, the transition side of triathlon side of things. Oh, put my teeth in. The transition side of things, if nothing else, then it's certainly worth it. If you're talking about running shoes, just to cover that off, you can get triathlon specific running shoes as well. And again, usually it's a similar thing to the bike shoes. Really, they normally have some kind of extra drainage to them, so a bit more kind of ventilation, let a little bit more moisture out of them. But the normal kind of thing is they're much softer and more forgiving on your feet, so that they're designed. If you wanted to run without socks on, they're designed for that. So that's the main kind of difference really with tri-specific shoes. I'm surprised you haven't got tri shoes already, Kate. I know you're pretty hot on this kind of stuff, and you're training like a machine at the moment, as we've seen. So absolutely, I think you're going to be a force to be reckoned. Well, you are a force to be reckoned with, but get some tri bike shoes, and it's going to improve your transition times with practice. No end, isn't it? Can't be fiddling around with little kind of straps and boa tightener things and all this kind of stuff on your transitions. But anything to add to that, Corin?
Not on the bike shoes. If you were thinking of tri-specific running shoes, personally, I've never had tri-specific running shoes. I find it hard enough to get a pair of trainers that fits well anyway. So as long as you've got some that haven't got tongues that are difficult to grab hold of in transition, or laces to tie. If you put elastic laces in and they've got a long tongue that you can grab hold of and it isn't going to fold up when you try and pull it on quickly, I would go for a shoe that you can run in comfortably over a tri shoe, which there might be quite a limited range of, and getting a good fit is a bit hit and miss.
Yeah.
So there are lots of good shoes out there with a sort of attached tongues now that so they're not going to fold and rub your feet. But yeah, definitely try cycle shoes, not so much the tri run shoes for me.
Yeah, totally agree with that on the running side of things. I think a lot of like a lot of triathlon products, there can be a lot of kind of gimmickry out there, and people trying to get the most out of triathletes by, well, it's called something a triathlon something or other. It'll get bought. You know, it's a way of getting money out of people. But so yeah, like Corin says, the triathlon, the shoes. The most important thing is that they're comfortable, and as always, they've been tried and tested before the race. So if there are little kind of gnarly bits on seams inside of the shoes, then you should be well aware of those, and have ironed out any kind of problems before kind of races and things start. But yeah, I mean, I've never personally had a pair of tri shoes. I know a few people do race with them, but just nice, comfortable shoes. And if you get a pair of shoes, this is something else to talk about all day as well. If you get a pair of shoes which works well for you, flipping buy 10 pairs of them. You know, because shoes do have a habit of changing. Your feet get used to doing a certain thing and moving in certain ways with certain shoes on, and if it's not getting any injuries and it's working well for you, keep the same thing going. Don't move. The things that gets people injured are changes in setups, and that can include the shoes. So yeah, because even if you get the same shoe model after model after model, they do tinker with them, and they do change over time. So find a shoe that works and stick with it. And on a similar kind of theme, I recommend that you don't, unless you're really at the top end and you're a really kind of really good runner, who's used to racing in lightweights and proper racing flats. For most people, race and train in the same shoe. So again, so your foot is used to it, got a good amount of cushioning in there. Shoes these days are pretty light anyway, so it's not like you're getting much benefit from extra lightness, the extra kind of the lightness of the shoe. But again, if you're used to lightweights and you're a lighter runner, you're nice and light on your feet, then you can get away with it, and that's obviously fine. So anyway, just kind of off a bit of a tangent there, but I thought I'd drop that in as well. Should we have a look at the next one? See what we've got. Right. Next question. Katie Sumner. I don't have a smart turbo trainer, so I do all my bike sessions on the road. Any tips on how to adapt the meetup sessions? Okay, so that's the Zwift meetup sessions you're talking about, Katie, there. I find timed intervals often get hindered by junctions and things. Okay, so I think because we're doing the meetup sessions at the moment every morning on Zwift, and what we're doing is we're publishing beforehand what the training session is. So Katie wants to be able to do those training sessions on the road because she hasn't got a smart trainer, hasn't got a turbo, and can't do them virtually indoors as we have been.
Doesn't want to if the sun's out.
Or doesn't want to if the sun's out. Yeah, whatever the reason is, those sessions absolutely can be done. A lot of them are actually based on sessions that we do outdoors anyway. What I would say to you really is, first of all, try not to get too hung up on being absolutely super accurate about when the intervals start and finish. Because as you kind of indicated there yourself, there's going to be a car, there's going to be someone crossing the road, there's going to be a junction. So if you're doing a 2-minute interval and you end up having to do 150 or 210, it doesn't make a huge amount of difference. You can't get too worked up about it, and it's not going to make a huge amount of difference to your training. So, and also, when you're racing, you're going to be accelerating and braking and going around corners at speed. If it's safe to do that, then you can do your intervals on the road, and effectively your training is there, you're racing. So say you're doing an 8 or 9 out of 10 effort, and you've got 2 minutes to go, and you're halfway through, and you've got a 90-degree junction. Then, provided it's safe, of course, then work your way through the junction as you would in a race. Take the junction at speed, or as happy as you're kind of confident to do, and treat it as a race, because you're going to be doing that on race day. What's another way of looking at it as well is if you know you've got a junction coming up and you've got an interval about to start, then just extend out the rest, and just wait yourself to be clear of the interval, and then start again. So in simple terms, it's just a case of tweaking and adjusting the intervals so that you can get the most out of them, but don't worry too much about being super rigid. I guess the difficulty is if you've got it programmed into your Garmin and it all goes a bit, do you know what I mean? Because you kind of, you've got to continually do the workout as it's set. So if you end up sitting at traffic lights for 30 seconds and miss your interval, then there's not a great deal you can do about it. I don't know if you can go back in Garmin by pressing any buttons or anything, Corin. I think you're better at this than me.
Don't think because I do program mine into my Garmin when I do them on the road. I don't think you can go back, but if I've got a junction coming up, I'm more likely to just press stop and wait, because I don't think it may just be that I haven't set it up, but auto pause doesn't work when it's within a workout. Okay. So if you came to a junction and you stopped, normally if you were just doing a training ride with no program, it would if you've got it set up to do so, it would auto pause. But mine doesn't do that, and I'm not sure if it's just that I haven't set it up or if it work out. To be honest, I just press start and stop, or like say just to extend them a little bit. It's not the end of the world if it doesn't tie in exactly with the interval. And there's certainly, going out on the road there's certainly lots of benefits to doing that in terms of for training, just in improving bike handling skills. So there are benefits to doing the stuff on the road as well as doing them exactly to the letter on the turbo.
Yeah, totally agree with all that. Joe Granger just sent a message and saying you can restart the step, but I'm not quite sure how you do that. But I think the most, like Corin says, the most simple thing to do is either just press stop and restart it again, or just kind of extend out one of the intervals to get over whatever it is that's in your way. But you absolutely can do the sessions on the road. And to be honest, I'd rather people did all of them on the road, but there's a decent mix up, because those bike skills are really important out on the roads. I know some very fast and very fit riders, strong riders who are a little bit lacking in bike handling skills, and someone who can ride a bike properly with good bike handling skills will wipe the floor with them most of the time. All right, so it's worth getting out there and actually making sure you've got the skills. So it's skills and the fitness and the strength combined which will make a fast rider. So hope that helps, Kate. I think that's pretty much all we can do on that. Right, so let's see what we've got comments coming in. Can you see that comment on Facebook from Sarah, Corin?
I've got a question. I've got the question from Sarah about fatigue levels, and particularly in relation to this year's training when there's no racing, and how do you tell your coach that it's too much?
How do you tell your coach that it's too much?
Can you see the question? Or do you want me to read it out?
No, I was going to suggest, because it's quite a long one, isn't it? Why don't you read and digest that while I read the next question? How about that?
Okay.
Because
you want to answer the difficult question, you mean?
Yeah. You can see right through me there. I thought it looks like it's the kind of question that needs a bit of thinking about rather than just reading out loud and going off the fly. So while Corin reads that, no pressure, Corin. I'm going to do the next question on here. Oh, wrong screen. What have we got next? So Ben. This is from Ben. Any tips for avoiding the cravings for sweet things all the time when training loads? Oh dear, Ben.
Or not when training loads, when training unloads, like me.
What, did I misread it? When training? I see.
No, you read it right, but I've still got the craving for sweet stuff, even though I'm not training.
So the cravings while the training loads. Well, I'm a believer in your body kind of is very good at telling you what it wants, and cravings are generally because your body is wanting some fuel or some energy of some description. So when the training volume goes up, then of course your energy requirement is going to go up too. So that's really a case, and we had Claire Fudge on from Fourth Discipline not so long back talking about it's kind of a case of planning what training you have coming up and planning your nutritional strategy around that, which seems really simple, but in real life actually isn't all that simple for people who are busy. So I think the simple answer to your question, Ben, is cravings normally happen when you're you're a bit hungry, and you start feeling a bit peckish, and that might be the time when you're likely to go and start raiding the cupboards and eating things that you shouldn't be eating. So the best approach really is to try and make sure you don't get to that point by eating ideally healthy foods, but ideally eating the right quantities at regular intervals, and try and stave off that hunger, those cravings, that temptation to go and raid the biscuit jar, whatever you call it, is the best kind of strategy. So I don't know if you've got anything to add on that, side of things, Corin? Again, this is a huge subject.
I think certainly Claire had quite a lot to say about this on the various training courses that we did. And one thing I would say as well, Ben, which I think may be relevant for you knowing what training you're doing, is that tiredness can also have a big impact on craving sweet stuff. And like Dave says, your body's craving something that it's lacking. It's craving those carbs to give it a quick fix, a quick hit, to make it feel better. But then you tend to get the crash afterwards if you have the sweet stuff. So it's all about, as Dave said, fueling stuff in advance, making sure that you're properly fueled for the kind of session you're doing. If that's a high interval session, even if it's less than because normally you have enough glycogen stores to get you through an hour session. But if it's a hard session, don't try and do it fasted like first thing in the morning when you're doing an interval session on the bike. Have something beforehand to get you through it, because otherwise, if you've not eaten since 8 o'clock the night before, you're going to really struggle. And then afterwards is when you're going to really be going for those snacky foods to try and fix the lack of fueling you had in advance. But lack of sleep can also make you crave sweet stuff as well. So if you're getting up at 5:30 in the morning to do a bike session, make sure you're getting a good night's sleep beforehand and go to bed earlier if you need to.
Yeah. I get cravings when I'm in the house. If I'm a bit bored or I get a bit stressed, I get craving, get tempted to go and start raiding cupboards and things. So it's a good idea to try and prevent those things happening, really. But yeah, Corin's absolutely right there. If you're doing the type of training session that requires some kind of faster energy, then you need to make sure that your body's got that energy. You've either had it beforehand or you're having something during. So even fairly short sessions, like Corin says again, if you're maybe not so fueled in the morning, because all that's going to happen is you'll probably get through the session. You might not quite perform as well as you could. You start to kind of degrade the second half of the session, say, when you're starting to run out of energy a little bit. You might not feel it, but sometimes the power might be down, or there might be some kind of changes there. Then normally it's quite a good indicator. But what will happen is afterwards, or maybe an hour or two afterwards, you'll start to feel really hungry. So your body will have to get those carbs at some point. So if you don't have them before, you don't have them during, then you've got to feed your body afterwards if needs be. And then if you've got another session later in the day, you're kind of almost repaying what you've already spent, and then you're going to have to kind of refuel ready for what comes. So it does take a bit of thinking about it. But again, it's not that difficult. It's just having your eyes open and just logically thinking, well, I'm training here and I'm training here. I need carbs. I need I need some protein and recovery afterwards. And just thinking it through. That's just thinking. It's not difficult. It just takes a bit of time and a bit of getting used to, and it should form part of your routine. Really, a lot of people train at similar types of sessions, at similar kind of days, and it's kind of quite routine. And again, your nutrition can follow the same kind of pattern. I guess the perfect athlete would be somebody who followed would be somebody who followed a similar training pattern from day to day, and they were almost like machines, so you'd know what training was coming, you'd know what their energy requirement was, you'd have the same foods at the same time and the same training at the same time. But of course we're not, and that's not the way we operate. In actual fact, that's not quite true, is it? Because Claire, the nutritionalist, kind of always suggests mixing up the food. She's a big advocate of not having the same thing day in, day out, isn't she? And I know that's something which is quite common for athletes as well, is they'll just have staple go-to foods which they'll eat all the time, but you need a variance of diet in there. But I hope you kind of get the point that I'm trying to make there. Do you ever go, Sarah?
Just to give you...
Sorry, go on.
I was just going to give Ben an idea of, say, if I was doing an interval session first thing in the morning, I wouldn't have breakfast beforehand because I'd rather stay in bed until 15 minutes before I get on the bike. But I would have a banana straight just before, about 10 minutes before the session, and then that would get me through an hour's session. But then I'd make sure I had something with a good mix of protein and carbohydrate in the right balance straight afterwards. So I might have a protein shake straight afterwards, or if I've got my breakfast ready and that's got, for me, about 15 to 20 grams of protein in that breakfast would be about right after that kind of session. So that's what I do, and that would set me up for the morning, and then get me back on a balance, because I'd be in deficit after the training session, but I'd probably want to train later in the day. So make sure you get those proteins and carbs in straight away afterwards, and then have a decent meal sort of within a couple of hours to fuel you ready for the next session in the afternoon if you're going to do 2 sessions in a day.
And that's an interesting point about the protein there as well, because the protein is generally the thing which will make you feel a bit fuller. So that may well be there's a bit of a lack of protein in your diet, or you want to take some more protein in and just kind of give you that feeling of fullness a little bit more. But we can speak to you about that separately, Ben. If you want to send us a message, we can have a bit of a closer chat to you about that, or have a chat to Claire about it if needs be. But nutrition, diet is I mean, Claire's business is called The Fourth Discipline because it's just huge. You know, it's so important, and we're talking about, you know, fitness side of the sports and the technical side of the sports and your kit and this, that, and the other. And one of the biggest, huge kind of component of everything that we're doing is the nutritional side of things. And if you forget that and don't get that right, then you can be devaluing a lot of all the other stuff that you're doing. So it's absolutely huge. So I do suggest that you all think about what you're eating, when you're eating it. And if you're not sure, you haven't got a clue, then speak to somebody who does, or drop us a message, and we'll either answer your questions or point you in the right direction for that. So, that right, Corinne?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's. Did you have a pop at Sarah's question?
Yeah.
No pressure.
So, do you want to put it up on the screen, or do you want me to read it out?
Yeah, if you can do, if you can.
Okay. So Sarah has asked, how do I tell my coach that I don't want to do so much training when my fatigue is so high on training peaks and she doesn't seem to notice? I'm tired all of the time and would like to just swim, bike and run with no structure really. If I tone things down as no racing this year, will it affect my season next year? I don't want to get rid of my coach. She needs the money and I do need structure, as I like to know what I'm doing each week, but just so fed up with being tired, but will also get bored if not training. It must be so hard for a coach to train someone when there are no targets, which I do understand.
Yeah,
I think there's a lot of this around at the moment. A lot of athletes are feeling, why am I training so hard when I've got nothing to train for in terms of races this year? And I think this is one way you just have to be really honest with your coach, and we've got quite a few athletes who are in the same boat, and what you don't want to be is super race fit in July this year and then have nothing to be race fit for, and you need to this might be your only opportunity for a few years to have a bit of a have just a bit of a rest from the and Sarah's been racing triathlon for many years, I know, and I think sometimes you just want to have a bit of fun and not have such a strict routine. And if you've been training in that routine for years and years, this might be a good opportunity to just give your mind and body a break a little bit from that really strict structure, and just accept that things might drop off a little bit. But you probably benefit from that in the longer run. In terms of talking to your coach about it, Dave, what would you say to that?
Yeah, well, it is a difficult one. I mean, I'll answer that question in a second, but I just kind of, obviously we have a lot of our own athletes, and this year has been so difficult because of obviously the circumstances we're in. But it's kind of gone from, we might be racing in June, we might be racing in July, we might be racing in August. Are we going to be racing at all? Therefore, what do you do with the training plan and the training programs and the coaching side of it? And how do you keep people motivated? And we've had all these questions that you're asking here, Sarah, time and time again, and it is really difficult. And we've got quite a few. I've got Siri suddenly appeared on my screen. So I go, Siri pops up and just starts interfering with things. So it is it is really difficult. Now, so we have a number of athletes who are still training towards a race in October time. So, and it's a full Ironman, the one I'm thinking of, and they have to, at this point in time, we have to make a decision whether or not we say, okay, well, let's make a decision you're not doing it, which is expensive if they just kind of walk away from the race, or we carry on and we decide, well, we've got to assume it's on until we hear otherwise. And that's what most of the athletes are doing at the moment, is they're continuing on, because I kind of think it may still happen. If you've got no races at all, Sarah, then that's a kind of a different ball game, because what are you training for? What are you training for? And Corin kind of indicated there, it's you can't operate at your peak and hold it there indefinitely, and you wouldn't be able to anyway, because the motivation wouldn't be there, because there's no races. And you kind of asked the question about the kind of the volume. Just kind of try and find it where you put in there. Blah, 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 blah. I remember where the question was now. I'm trying to find it. Tired all the time.
She's so tired.
Yeah.
From the volume training.
Yeah. So he said something along the lines of, there was, does it matter if you don't train this year, or will it affect you for next year, or something like that? That's a difficult one to answer. I think the reality is that if you didn't, I know you, Sarah, actually, and if you didn't train at all, then you'd benefit from the break, as Corin has said there, but I know you wouldn't be happy like that. So training is not all about the physical well-being, it's about the mental well-being too. So if you don't have any races, the approach I would suggest with you is that to keep yourself happy mentally and physically, is there would be a level of almost like tick over training, which ticks the box for you mentally and physically. Also kind of keeps your fitness levels at a steady level for the rest of the kind of what would be this season, but then have a proper recovery period afterwards, and then start afresh, ready for next year. Hopefully, if everything's ready next year, we can kind of crack on in whenever your coach gets you to go. So October, November, December, whenever it turns out to be. So that's what I would suggest you look at, and that's how I would approach it with your coach. Is that I'd be honest. You've got to be honest with your coach. You've got to have an honest relationship between the two of you. I wouldn't worry too much about their financial side of things. That's not your concern. But yeah, just be honest with each other, and just say that you want to have a training plan which kind of leaves you feeling fulfilled. There's enough kind of challenge in there to keep you interested, but predominantly you need to take the pressure off. And one of the best ways to take the pressure off is to come away from the gadgets a little bit more. So not have to be doing 7-minute mile intervals and smashing out this and smashing out that, and having all the pressure of having to do this and do that and do the other. You want to go out and you want to ride your bike. You want to go out and you want to swim. You want to go out and go for a run and enjoy training. You can still train and keep fit without having a huge amount of structure. And that's kind of in a very long-winded way is what I'm kind of saying here is they need to understand that you need to have a period of where you're just keeping yourself, you're doing it because you want to do it and you're enjoying it, and that will keep your fitness levels at a reasonable level and tick over. And then of an off-season period, or maybe a shorter off-season period and a longer build for next year. I don't know if I've answered the question there, kind of waffled on a little bit, but that's kind of what I suggest. But you've got to speak to your coach. You've got to be honest with them. If your fatigue is super high on training peaks, then it's kind of, well, why is it up there? Why is it up there? Is it that your training has gone up for you to peak at a race, but there's no race there, and it's just you've carried on the same program, or are they just not aware of it? It depends what the circumstances are. Really, it sounds a bit strange. And with our own athletes, we've adjusted things depending on what they're doing. So some of them are carrying on kind of standard training plans or middle distance training plans, but we've just taken the edge off it. There's no point, if you've got no races, there's no point going out and doing 5-hour training blocks if you've got no races now. It depends what's coming up in the future. There's no point doing it. So it is difficult. Do you think that's answered the question, Corinne?
I hope so.
Yeah. I just feel like it's like...
It sounds like Sarah just needs a little bit of a foot off the gas, even if it's for a month, just have a month off, just doing what she likes.
Yeah.
And then maybe getting back on it.
Yeah. It's just you. Yeah, I mean, I've spoken to a few people this week about, particularly on the running side of things, feeling the pressure about going and doing intervals when there's no. It's hard to get yourself up to do things like that when there's no real reason to do it without any imminent races. So just go out and run and enjoy yourself, and go out without your watch and go out and explore the trails and just enjoy running for the sake of running, And it's beautiful. You what? Sorry.
I've found the start of lockdown going out and doing some cross country running and just exploring the footpaths around was a great way to sort of force me not to worry about the pace, because there's stiles and there's gates and there's rough ground and there's nice shoes to take photos of and stuff. And I really, really enjoyed running in a way that I don't enjoy running in the same sense when I'm pounding the roads in interval sessions. And that was a great way to just take your foot off the gas a little bit and remind yourself why you do it.
Yeah, they're the best kind of running. They're the best kind of runs. People lose the running cycling as well, but people lose the love for running because they just you feel like you got to be on it and training all the time. Just go out and enjoy it and just be out. I mean, it's glorious at the moment. Go out there and be out in nature. Sounds a bit cheesy, but that kind of thing. Anyway, so hope that helps, Sarah. I think you've replied there a little bit. Makes sense. Good. I like it when things make sense. Yeah, you got to speak to your coach. Yeah, you got to speak to your coach. But have a chat to us if you want any more help with any of that kind of stuff. So let's have a look at the next question. I think we're pretty much. I don't think we've got many more left. I'm just going to switch you off to Corinne and bring the next one up. Let's have a look at this one. What's this one? John Southall. Right. In the commit training plan, it mentions fueling like you would for a 1-hour run. Fueling, let me read this properly. It mentions fueling like you would in a race for a 1-hour run. What's the recommended options? Okay, all right. So we'll deal with that in a second then. So any ideas how to do a temporary bike fit on my new, just before lockdown, TT bike? Temporary bike fit. Never had one. Don't seem to be able to get comfortable or feel safe on the aero bars. Maybe I'm just a wimp. Oh, you're not a wimp, John. Come on. It's the same boardman as mine. Okay, all right. So we've probably touched on the fueling side of things for an hour's run, haven't we? We kind of mentioned that a little bit earlier. So fueling for a 1-hour run, it depends. I can't remember if that's a run on its own or a run as part of a brick. So the most simple way to look at this really is if it's a mid-intensity to low-intensity training session, and it's less than an hour, you don't really need to fuel for that. As long as you've been eating normally surrounding the session, you don't really need to worry too much about fueling for that, because your body should have a natural amount of reserves for that. So that's if it's moderate intensity down to kind of low intensity. If it's a high intensity workout, then you will be burning through your body's sugar reserves, or your burning energy reserves, if you like, quicker than you would do normally. So you need to make sure you're fueled for that. Now, the best way to do that is to forward plan. So look in the afternoon. I've got an hour's tough session in the afternoon, say 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So you'd have something fairly not too heavy but carby kind of based at lunchtime, so a few hours before it, so your body's got time to process it, stock up your glycogen stores, and you've got enough energy to do that workout in the afternoon. If you cut short and you haven't got time, or your planning is out and you don't get time to eat that meal a couple of hours beforehand, then have something just before you start, but it would have to be a high sugar, high glycemic index item of food. So a gel, or like Corin talked about, swimming, a banana, something like that, just to give you an extra bit of boost to get you through that particular session. And we say it should be either quite a long way before the session or right before it. Otherwise, what happens is you get an insulin spike during the session. Sorry, an insulin dip during the session, and you'll suffer as a result of that. You might feel the effects of that. I think you've had a bit of that with your swimming, haven't you, Corin? That kind of fueling issues.
Yeah.
I've lost you a little.
Yeah, usually just after an hour, whatever kind of session. I'm not on screen, I don't think, but it doesn't matter.
Sorry, yeah.
I'll hit just after an hour. I will go off a cliff when I'm swimming, and if I've not had anything. So yeah, I usually just have a banana beforehand. But if it's running, my strategy would be slightly different as to what I would have beforehand, depending on how your stomach copes with different foods. You might want to avoid anything with too much fibre in with your meals before you run, because that can obviously cause some problems for some people when they're running. So yeah, sometimes a banana is good, but if you're sensitive to for an unripe banana rather than a ripe banana, because that's one thing that I've found working with Claire, that I can't deal with ripe bananas, but I can have unripe ones, and they're great for just before a session. And it has to be something, like Dave says, that's fairly quick release sugars for an intense session like that.
Yeah. So hopefully that answers your question there, John. If it's a, just to kind of finish that off, if it's a run off the bike, so say you do an hour bike and an hour's run off the bike, so effectively a 3-hour session, then that would be a session where you would need to fuel. And we say effectively as a race, because you would, if you were doing a race of that kind of distance or longer, you would need to fuel at regular intervals throughout that. So again, different individuals have different daily kind of nutritional needs for a training session or a race, depending on their size and the kind of the intensity level and that kind of thing. But in simple terms, you want to be taking in around about kind of 50 to 75 grams of carbs an hour. The kind of the standard go-to is a gram of carb per kilogram of body weight per hour. So if you're 75 kilogram male, you'd have 75 grams of carbs per hour. So it's but there is variances around that. But that's just kind of a start point for you to look at. Some people can take more, some people can take less. So if you have a look at energy gels and things like that, energy bars, they're generally kind of 20, 25 grams. So you could be talking 3 an hour. So that's the kind of consideration that you need to give these training sessions. Otherwise, if you didn't take any energy, you did a 2-hour bike and an hour's run, you're going to be suffering on the run because you're going to be running out of gas. Unless it's super, super low intensity. 80 kilos. There we go. It wasn't far off, John. So you would have some fuel during it. And you would start from the beginning. So for argument's sake, if you're going to have, let's make it easy, 2 gels or 2 bars an hour, you'd have one after you start the bike at 0 point, then you'd have one after half an hour, one after an hour, one after an hour and a half, continually all the way through. Okay, all the way through. And just keep it simple. And then you'd adjust from there, depending on how you react. Some people can get more in, some people need more, some people, they take too much and it will start to back up because your body will only process so much. You've got to find out where your kind of optimum points are and what the best type of nutrition for you are.
I think that's a really important point, that eating, the part of the reason that these training sessions say fuel like you would in a race is not just so you keep fueled through the training session, it's for you to take the opportunity to experiment with different kinds of fueling. Some people work well with gels, some people absolutely do not work well with gels and need to have real food. Some people can put their carbs in a drink and do well with that, and others would be better with water and something, and maybe shot blocks or something like that. So do use those training sessions as an opportunity to experiment with different kinds of fueling, and to get your body used to the type of fuel that you use. And as well as obviously the fuel is also the hydration. So when it comes to a race, you're not trying anything new, and you know what you're using in the race is going to work for you.
Yeah, really, really important. You come to race day, there shouldn't be any surprise on race day. You should have practiced what you're going to do on race day time and time and time and time again. And that includes not just the kind of the physical racing side of things, but also especially the nutrition. You should know what you're going to take, what works for you, when you're going to take it, in the conditions, at the intensity level. There should be no surprises. And I think a lot of people, when they're doing the bigger training sessions towards the races, they don't realise how important that is. And also, I guess gels and energy food and all the proper stuff is expensive. So people sometimes avoid spending all that money. But you go out for a training session, could cost you 20 quid's worth of gels and bars and things. So it is expensive. But as you get closer to race day, it's important to try and get that dialed in, so you're used to it, your body's used to it. Right, so should we do the last one? I think there's one more question. We're kind of way running over. You all right for time, Corinne?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, fine.
All right, so let's have a look. So I think we're on the last question here. Any tips on how to overcome the fear of swimming in deep water? I used to be fine at Ragley, but thought of anything deeper in quarries gives me the heebie-jeebies. My knees curl up just thinking about it. That's an interesting one. So, be interesting to know, Topsy, if you've had any kind of experiences that have led to you feeling like that. That would be an interesting one, because if you have, it may be something there that when I say it needs dealing with, sounds like something to it, like there's something wrong or too extreme. But there's something that could probably be discussed and talked about with with us or an expert in that kind of field, and just to see if that can be ironed out a little bit is probably the best way of putting it. But in simple terms, there are strategies which can try and help you feel a bit more confident in a body of water that you're not particularly comfortable in. First of all, there's some of this stuff takes practicing, and when I talk about visualizations and mindsets, it can sound a bit like BS, for want of a better way of putting it, but it's worth trying, because these things really can help. So what you can think about is you can almost start thinking internally. So, and what's the best way of explaining it? So when you're swimming in an open body of water, most people are worried about the depth or the shadows down, the deepness, or there's a flipping shark in there, or whatever it is that they're worrying about. You're thinking externally about all the things there that might be out to get you. What you can actually train yourself to do is think internally. So try and effectively lock out those things that you're worrying about. And the way you think internally is think about what you're trying to do with your stroke. Think about how I'm going to swim from A to B in the most effective manner. Think about your breathing, and think about your heart rate and your effort level, how your body feels, that kind of thing. So you're looking inwardly. Is that a word, inwardly? I don't know. Anyway, you know what I mean. Inward, rather than thinking, oh Christ, what's that down there, and panicking. But it's easy to say that. It's easier for me to say that, and I know you're not going to switch it on and, oh yeah, okay, that's going to fix it. It's not going to work like that. It's going to take some practice. So visualizations is certainly one. I think having a good knowledge about the venue that you're in, or the location that you're in. So find out what is in there, how deep it is, and just have a bit of, hopefully you'll find out there's nothing in there to worry about. Yeah, it's deep, but it doesn't matter how deep it is. You've got all the security, all the safety kind of mechanisms around you. Some confidence in terms of if you're swimming with a wetsuit on, you know, if you just roll on your back, you'll float. You know, just to know that if everything goes wrong, you're still going to be okay. If you really start to panic and you freeze up, you can just roll on your back and you will float. You'll float. So it's improving your knowledge about the actual environment that you're in. You know that people are watching you. You know that there's safety boats around and that kind of thing. So another thing is just taking your time and the kind of gradual exposure to the thing that you're frightened of. So it may well be that you go to that quarry or that sea, because I know people have a real thing about swimming in the sea, and just swim around in the shallows initially. Just swim around where that you are comfortable with, and then maybe over time you just get a little bit further out, and just gradually expose yourself to the thing that you're not very comfortable with. That's another way of doing it. And then I think finally, I can't think of anything else after this, but I think finally as well, go swimming with somebody maybe who you've got real confidence in. So someone who you know is a good confident swimmer is going to keep an eye on you and look after you. Just kind of keep their arm, not physically put their arm around you, but just kind of, you know, look after you when you're out there. So a combination of all those things really should be enough for you to kind of at least help to improve those fears. So there's hopefully some things there for you to consider. I don't know if you've got anything to add to that, Corin.
Very briefly, I would just say choose your venue. There are quite a few venues opening up now. I would suggest, if deep water is what scares you, not going somewhere like Dosthill, which is a quarry and very deep, but perhaps going to somewhere like the Lenches Lakes near Evesham, which is a bit shallower, and like Dave says, you can get in and you can swim around in the shallows, and it's quite a small lap. So when you actually do go for a swim round, it's not a vast lake where you feel like you're in the middle of nowhere and it's a long way to the edge. So somewhere like the Lenches is a really sort of a nice place for you if you're not particularly confident. It's nice, relaxed, it's quite small. There's shallows that you can potter around in and then get out, and that's all you need to do the first time. I would also say maybe swim with a tow float. They're not meant as a sort of life-saving device or anything like that, but if you are lacking confidence, if you just feel like you want something to grab and have rest and lean your chin on for a moment, having that tow float with you just gives you that little bit of confidence that I am going to be okay because I've got that with me, just as a little sort of booster for you. But do go with a friend. There's lots of people in squad who would be happy to come along with you. And I know Janet's already responded to your query, but lots of us will be happy to swim with you. So don't go on your own and worry about it. Go with somebody.
Yeah, good. Okay, well, I think that's pretty much. Let me just check my list. My voice is going. I've been talking for an hour now. Let me just check my list and see if there's anything else on here. No, I think that's it. Should we check? Let's check the comments. See if there's anything else.
Mark said about tow float as well, and new locations. So
So Mark Richardson. Hello, Mark. I know Mark from back in the day, back in the past. Agree with what Dave says. Can use a tow float. Also use tow float if nervous. New locations, conditions are a bit rougher than what you're used to. Yeah, I mean, I've actually I go on holiday to on holiday to Mousehole in Cornwall, and there's an island about. I think it looks about 50 meters, but I think it's about 2 miles off the coast. It's not really. I think it's about 200 meters. And I'm not a big fan, particularly of swimming on my own in the sea. I don't mind in a race when there's 1,000 other people trying to kick your head in. You know, I don't mind that. But when you're on your own swimming out into the sea, I'm not a big fan of that. And I actually look at the island from the beach or from the shore, and it looks so close. But as soon as you swim out of the harbour, you know, you go about 10 feet outside the harbour, you feel like you're in the middle of the Atlantic. It's kind of a weird feeling. Anyway, so I looked down, and it had seaweed. You know, the bottom was probably about, I don't know, 30 feet away or something, but you could see this seaweed and the dark shapes, and it made me, I could feel myself start to not panic, but just almost like the start of a panic. And I thought better of it in the end, because I thought, I'm not comfortable. And if I'm not going to comfortable, I'm not going to swim around the island with no one having a clue where I was. So I thought better of it and kind of grew up a little bit and went back in. But I think anyone can feel like that. I can remember when I used to go open water swimming in the early days, I used to dread it. I used to absolutely dread it. I used to drive there and be looking forward. I used to be looking forward to being in the car driving back again. That's what I was looking forward to, And then it got to the point where it was something you looked forward to. It's just it's like going out and running on the trails again. It's beautiful once you get used to it. So it's certainly worth persevering with. And like Corinne says, give us a shout and make sure that we can find someone to help you out, because you certainly don't want to avoid it, because it's absolutely wonderful once you get comfortable and happy with it. It's
especially in weather like this.
Yeah. It's like the equivalent of running on a treadmill compared to running through some beautiful scenery. It's chalk and cheese, really. So anyway, I think that's it. Pat's just popped up. Thinking about my breathing really helps me not to panic. Yeah, and a toe float. Yeah, think about your breathing. Breathe. Just
if you feel that panic coming on, just focus on breathing, or even counting strokes, just counting a rhythm, counting 1, 2, 3 with your strokes, or 1, 2. Just give you something completely mindless to focus on, to take your mind off what's worrying you.
Yeah, good. Okay, I think we're done. Anything else from you, Corinne?
No,
that was a good one. That was some good questions there. So again, we will do this. We'll try and do it every week. Clearly, things go pear-shaped sometimes. It doesn't happen, but we'll try and do it. We'll try and do it every week. So hopefully you found that useful. This will be uploaded to YouTube for you to watch and review and whatever in the future. If you don't already subscribe to us, I hate all this stuff, but I think you've got to do it these days. If you don't already subscribe to us, then click the subscribe button and press the little bell, because that tells you when we're on. And we're on all the time at the moment. It feels like 10 times a day. Yeah. And if you've got anything you want us to talk about, we could do a Q&A session where we cover a particular subject as a kind of almost like a base start point. Then let us know, and we can plan a session around that. We've got plenty of ideas ourselves, but if you've got anything that you want us to have a chat about, then let us know as well. But I think that's it. All done, Corinne?
Yeah, all done.
All right. Thank you very much. See you next time. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.